Paul Krugman again with a very quick tariff update. Sunday afternoon, I wrote my Substack this morning about the trying to explain, where these various tariff authorities come from and where things stand now. It's become clear, if you weren't following, that the Supreme Court ruled that the main instrument of Trump's tariffs was in fact illegal, was unconstitutional to do what he did. Trump immediately turned around and said, oh yeah, I'm going to use another provision. IEEPA is out, so I'm going to use Section 122 instead, and I'm going to impose 10% tariffs. And then a little bit later he said, no, actually 15% tariffs, which is the maximum. It's now clear that they really didn't think this through. That this was the underlying policy reasoning seems to have been, oh yeah, that's kind of as all that went into this. And it turns out that it's becoming really clear that the new tariff authority, even if it holds up, which is somewhat in question, just doesn't, from the point of view of Trump and those around him, just doesn't do what the old one did. And in fact, trying to use it creates a lot of problems. The basic point is that as they were using it, as they were misusing IEEPA tariffs, there were no rules really. He could impose tariffs on different countries for different reasons, different rates across the board. He could go and impose a punitive tariff on Brazil because they had the temerity to put a former president on trial for trying to overturn an election. He could he could offer deals with countries if they promised to spend lots of money. It was a really open-ended, here, I got the power, now grovel. Section 122 allows him to put a 15% tariff across the board for balance of payments reasons, which is actually a lie, but anyway, but it's the same tariff. It doesn't allow for discrimination among countries. Now this means, first of all, that countries that were facing high tariffs under the previous regime, Brazil, but also China, much more important, suddenly have much lower tariffs. So, this big exercise of power has turned into a bust. Also, countries that groveled, like Britain, to get a lower tariff rate, suddenly find that they have to pay the same 15% tariff as everyone else. So all of a sudden, it's not so much the average level of tariffs, but the selective tariffs, high on countries that pissed Trump off, low on countries that display the appropriate amount of self-humiliation. All of that has gone away, replaced with a flat across-the-board tariff, and that is the point. An across-the-board tariff, for whatever reason, is not what Trump wanted. What he wanted was leverage. He wanted an ability to throw his weight around, and that has largely evaporated. I don't know how this all plays out. Maybe they can find ways to use the other tariff authorities, the Section 232s and 301s, which read my Substack to find out about all of that. But they're awkward, and it's going to be really hard to say that, for example, that Brazilian exports to the United States pose a national security threat because the Brazilians tried and convicted a former president. It's going to be really hard to say that British exports are not a threat, while exports from other countries that are just as much U.S. allies, or if anybody's a U.S. ally now as Britain, are continuing to be a threat. So the whole machinery of using the tariffs to assert personal power has been abruptly dismantled. This is a really big deal, and I really don't care. What the average tariff rate may be when the dust settles, if the dust ever settles, is not important. What matters is that tariffs as an instrument of arbitrary power have been dismantled. I guess that's good news. Take care.